Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for coming. Hi, Mana. Hi, Chocobo. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Carmine. Hi, Zatara. It is so good to see you. Oh, we got tactical bird cam. All right. One moment. Oh, no, my phone does not hear me. Oh, did you see? Yeah, the writing stream challenge. So I just loaded that in last night. And I started at 100K, and Ryan was like, they're gonna do that in like 10 days. Thank you so much for the sub! Ah, Hassan Kane is now sub. So, Zatara, I will be talking about writing spicy scenes and intimate scenes. So it's kind of a lewd stream, but I was very careful because I don't want Twitch to ban my account. So I'm going to be cautious. And I didn't put any like lewd imagery really into the PowerPoint. Thank you. Oh, okay, let me turn on tactical burbs. I just posted everywhere on Discord, so I'm giving it just a second before I get started. There's tactical burbs. So Jack and a couple other people had talked about us doing a 24-hour TV stream once where I got his PNG tuber done, where he and I would like swap off for a full 24 hours. So we would be working for 24 hours straight. Whatever we can. Hey, Sneaky! We are talking about boobs. Yep, that is part of it. I used a little bit of your commission that I just wrote for you, Carmine, actually. It is crazy. Boobies. We're going to be absolutely mature this whole time. You're normal entities. That's wonderful. I love it. how not to breast boobily down the stairs or bouncing boobily. Okay, I'll give it one more minute and we'll get started. Thank you guys so much for coming. I have been nervous about this because I share some of my own writing in it. And as we know, I like turn into a puddle if I write my own or read my own stuff out loud. So it's going to be interesting.
I think you'll warm up.
Thank you. I got Riot at my back and the bird screaming and some wine. So I've got this. We're going to be good. Chocobo had sent me some questions in advance, but as always, if you guys have any questions, this is very informal. So we can pause, take a break, and I'm happy to review. Thank you, Valerie. I'm trying. All right, let's get started. So for those who don't know me, my name is Catherine LaCroix, and I tried to write my first erotica in 2016, where it was right at like the 50 Shades boom. So people were self-publishing like erotica on Amazon rapid fire, and they were like, you could make 6 figures off of this. Oh, okay, let's try and see what happened. But my books wound up being way more like Victorian fantasy than they actually did erotic, and I found out doing those that I really enjoyed writing it. So I opened some commissions and I started doing commissions for other people and learned a ton. And then I started writing all the spice for cat girls and learned a ton more, and I still do erotic commissions, and I am constantly learning how to write these scenes and how better to write these scenes. But you also know me as one half of Double Blinds with Rye, and I am Lynx in the Discord. This is our first panel where we're gonna have some rules just so we can establish this and get it out of the way. We will be discussing adult content, so viewer discretion is advised. If you have kids in earshot or little ones who are watching, please don't send me angry emails. This is a judgment-free sex-positive panel, so no one's questions are going to be laughed at or dismissed. If I feel uncomfortable or if I don't feel like I can answer it, I just don't have the knowledge, I'll just let you know. No question is dumb or silly or anything. Any kink shaming at all, or if we start asking questions that make people uncomfortable and it's a ban from the stream and a ban from our Discord server, everyone who is here right now, I know you're fine. I don't see that happening. I just like to put that out there because I am very adamant that everyone is accepted for who they are. It doesn't matter what you're into. Please be respectful for others, and then let's just have some fun. Talk about booba. What we're going to cover today. So we're going to go over building tension, language. Hey, Resident. Hey, Al. Pacing, fantasy versus reality, communication and consent, and then intimacy and character growth. So these are just kind of general overview, and we'll get into each one of them a little bit more in depth. There's a lot of text on each one of these slides. I really got into it. I worked on this thing for like 6 hours, so I'm sorry. It's just a subject that I'm very excited about and I'm very passionate about. So I'm excited to share my thoughts with you guys. Also in that vein, this is how I write, and this is how it's been easiest for me to approach these scenes. Everyone can be a little bit different. You will have your own writing style. No reason to copy me. Try your own things, and what works for me may not work for you in the end. So take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. The first thing that we're going to talk about is building tension. And underneath this heading, before I start, I want to say that one of the things that I noticed a lot from smaller authors and even bigger publishers right now, even bigger authors, they'll have sex scenes that don't feel like they actually belonged in the story. They just kind of went back and decided, yes, I want some spice between these characters. And then both of the characters, or more, whoever's in the scene, who enter become completely different people. So it's really important to carry your character through these as your character. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but this panel is just as much characterization as it is writing spice. So I got that off the table. The very first part and the most important part to build tension is to choose one character's point of view and stick with it. A lot of tension in spice comes from not knowing what the other character or characters are thinking or feeling, and your main character has to try and discern that, like, as they're moving. That really helps because it's going to build that mystery, and it's going to force questions, and it's going to make you have to think from that character's point of view. Like, if they don't know what's going on, shouldn't they ask? Or if they're uncomfortable, shouldn't they say? Or if they want to know the other person, are they going to ask that? So keep it to one point of view in the scene and stick to it. The best scenes are a result of the character's anticipation, which goes hand in hand with sticking to that point of view. So you build the tension, you build the anticipation. They're getting really excited. Hey, Rune, thank you. So it's getting you to that point of just like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? And you're getting your reader excited too, because your reader's excited with that character. Third point, foreplay is king. Oh my goodness. This does not just mean like rushing to third base and heavy petting and like suddenly we're all just already up in each other's clothes. I'm talking about like ear biting, like going up against like somebody else's body fully clothed, banter. Like there's so many things that work well for foreplay. So if you're just jumping immediately to the sex, there's going to be a lot of tension loss, a lot of anticipation loss. And your reader's kind of like, what just happened? Like those scenes make me read them 2 or 3 times and to understand like what the heck just occurred between these two people. So make sure that you have some kind of buildup. Next most important point, I find personally that if I don't care at all about the characters, I could care less what they're doing in bed. And this goes with long format stories, short format stories. Even if they're like 1,500 words, you should still have some character buildup and some character development, because your reader should know a little bit about who they are, what brought them here, how they're feeling about it, like if they're excited, if they're nervous, if it's their first time, what's the relationship between these two people, what kind of personality do they have, like inside and outside of the bedroom, like are they usually very standoffish and shy, are they very loud and like in your face, just something to connect your reader to the character. Even if your reader is nothing like that character at all, you can still make them care about what's happening in that scene. Everyone good so far? Any questions on this slide before I move on? I know I'm going kind of fast. I'm gonna take a sip of water. How do you manage 2+? It's a great question. Cool. So anything over 2 gets really wild. So my first 2 books had thruples as like a thing in the world called a ring. So relationships had 3 people. And it's a very careful balance of still sticking with one character, but describing what the other 2 characters are doing, plus the other sensations. 3 or more character chapters wind up being really long because you have to give them time to like resolve everything. And we'll talk about chapter length a little bit longer, or like a little bit later. But it's, I'll tell you kind of like what I described to when I show you a few examples. But you really want to make sure that you're hitting each character and feeling that they're represented, unless it's, you know, like a cuckold situation where it's just one person sitting there and then you can mention that they're watching every so often. So it depends on the context and what you're writing. How do you write foreplay? It's totally up to the characters. Like it depends on what the characters are doing. I just wrote 2 villains like going at it the other night, and their foreplay was fighting in a arena and just tearing each other apart. And then like it got really gritty and it was awesome. But other times it can be like, you know, sitting, having dinner, and like somebody just kind of touches you underneath the, like on the leg with their feet, like little footsies. You can do cute things, you can do intimate things, you can do anything with foreplay. Sneaky, that's actually a really good point about combat. I've talked to Rai with like at length about how sex scenes and combat scenes are actually very, very similar, because there's only so many ways to describe certain things and you are constantly looking at what else to describe. So it can get complicated, but it's still doable. It's just, it takes more time and more attention. Is there a shift from friendship caring to foreplay that you like to track or toggle between? I kind of let the characters tell me. A lot of times, like, you kind of have them start flirting and you kind of see how their flirting goes. Like, this sounds nuts, but like I let my characters talk to me, and when I have their dialogue go and have the conversation going back and forth, I'll feel it out. Like, if I pretend that somebody's sitting there talking to me like that, like, how would I feel? Or I try and put myself in their shoes and decide if like this is right. And you can write it, like write that next part, and if it feels like it's a jump the next time you come back and edit, then you kind of add a little bit more. So it's just a constant playing with it until you're happy. What if one of your characters is dead and came back to life? That would be a really specific plot question and not exactly like on the topic of just overall spicy. So I mean, that can be, I just wrote something like that for Carmine. And that doesn't mean that they have to be the dom. Like, you can swap out anything you want. So there's a lot of openness to it, which is great. And also terrifying, because there's not really a 5-step program to writing like really good sex scenes. You just kind of learn the things that you want to add and take away and what feels smooth. I'm going to hop to the next slide, because we're going to talk about language. This is so important. We're going to be on this slide for a few minutes. Okay. So, in my experience, intimate scenes are the hardest pieces of fiction to write well. Hands down, 100%. It just takes practice. It just takes writing them a bunch. What's the best way to convey the level of experience? Language, honestly, and there's a slide of confidence that you'll see a lot. Like, somebody who's more experienced is going to have a lot more confidence than someone who's just coming to the table. I mean, they could have confidence, and then you can decide whether like that confidence is well placed or if it's just like, oh my gosh, she's the worst. Your MC in the novel you're writing is very dominant and impulsive. Then yeah, Rune, that's up to your novel. That's up to your story and how you want to write it. You've heard a joke for foreplay is plausible deniability, one-upmanship. Until it is overtly clear they want the action. Does that track to what you feel when you follow your characters? I'm not positive how to answer that one. What do you mean? One-upmanship.
It comes off to me like he's talking that foreplay can be kind of aggressive, and that the person isn't immediately accepting of it.
It depends on your characters in the story. Like, yeah, banter back and forth, you can build the tension that way. It doesn't have to be one-upmanship. It can just still be like hand touching or like sliding closer to each other. Like, you just kind of keep adding things to it. Not so much like one character is trying to best the other as much as it's just adding to the tension. So if your characters are like that, where you want them to keep one-upping each other, absolutely go for it. But that's up to the characters and their personalities. Hi, Sky. You did not miss the Hard Plains coverage. We're almost there, though. We are close. All right, budgies are back to color. There's a lot you can do with foreplay, and like I said, foreplay doesn't just include like hitting second and third base. It's everything. It's the conversation. It's the banter. It's the little touches here and there. It's like just like getting really close and whispering into someone's ear. Like there's a million things that you can do with it that still build that tension. Converting back to the topic of language, my second point is you have to figure out who your audience is, especially when you're talking about language and the words that you're going to use for these scenes. Because in my next point, we're going to talk about hard planes and creating your own terminology. How do you distinguish tension versus foreplay? I mean, foreplay builds tension, so they're connected. Like that's going to help you build the tension up. What is a hard plane? So the reason I ask about your audience is because there are terms that I've seen in both men's action novels and women's romantasy that make me want to put my hand through a wall. And hilariously, one of them is hard planes. So I see this a lot in women's romantasy and women's romance, where a man's chest and abdomen are described as hard planes. And I don't understand why. Yeah, like this makes me cringe so bad. Like just call it his abs or his chest or muscles or something, but like hard plane, like I brought this up in our Discord when I was reading this book and none of the guys knew what hard planes were. So if your audience, if you want to hit well with male readers, you need to be careful. Are dad bods rolling hills? That's a great question. 100%. Yeah, no one knows what a hard plane is. And the other one that was in the book that shall not be mentioned was worshiping at her altar, which was just the term for giving her oral. And every time it came up, I snickered, like every single time. I tried to accept it as like, this is just this world. This is just what this world means and needs and does and whatever. But I couldn't, like I could not follow this phrase at all. So on the other end of the spectrum, I have read a lot of men's fiction that talks about things like ball slapping and like just descriptors that I'm sorry, I don't think any female like wants to read that. Like we kind of go, like, yeah, it happens, but is that really what you're focusing on? So be really careful. So be really careful of using these kinds of terms. I totally am all for like having a raunchy scene, but there's ways to do it that don't make you like cringe and kind of go, emo. So please, no hard planes, no worshiping at altars, no ball slapping. Like, you have to be really, really careful. I've also seen a lot of people talk about velvet wrap tool is like a thing in romantasy, which every time makes me think of a knife. So I'm not really equipped for that one. So yeah, you've seen mashing nipples. That sounds horrible. Yes, velvet wrap steel. That absolutely sounds like a dagger or a sword. Like, no reality. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. That's fine. So be careful of any kind of euphemism like that. There are a lot of readers who love them, so I can't sit here and say like, no one's going to like them, because clearly these books sell really well, really, really well. But establish your audience, because if you're going to be writing and you really want to attract like both sides, all readers, then you're going to have to tailor it so that it fits well for everybody. A sword fight time. Whee! Yeah, we turn the birds back on. everyone was very excited for the hard planes conversation, and I giggle every time I think about bringing up hard planes in Discord, and no one knew what that meant. Like airplanes? Nope, not like airplanes. Yeah, it smelled like airplanes. Why are you sorry? It's given me so much fuel. Don't be sorry. I mean, they could, but I wouldn't ever talk about that. That's not sexy. I want people to read that and be like, wow, this is really hot. Not like, what did I just read? Like, cringe-inducing sex scenes make me sad because there's so many opportunities, but this is where we went. Before the altar of ball slapping. There's a religion I don't recommend. So next, going with this is using your character's personality to your advantage and using their voice and their word choice with things. So mixing up sex scenes, like making each one of them feel different, is one of the greatest challenges to making consistently good ones. We'll talk a little bit more about that as I continue, but one of the best ways that you can make them feel different is by using your character's personality and their language. So for example, I've used descriptors or like words that would cater to a specific character. So Tristan's an artist. So when Tristan talks about things, and even during his sex scenes, I have him use words like trace, paint, broad strokes, like things that would go with an artist. And then Portia, I had a scene with her and I made sure to like slip in words like waves, net, anchor, like use some metaphors. Like this is definitely going to tie it into your character and make it feel like your character is there and not like you just slap this into the story because you needed a sex scene. Like bring your characters into it with you and let them talk, like use their voice. Thank you so much for the follow. Dew on the grass. Cute name. So also in that vein, if you have a sweet and soft-spoken character, they should not swap to a raunchy body vocabulary just because the clothes came off. This breaks the character so fast. Like, I've seen these really like cute little girls like Cannoli in stories where all of a sudden they go in and they're like screaming profanities that I have not seen in the story so far, and like thinking things that I'm like, what? It just doesn't feel like them. So it's really important to make sure that whatever they're saying, thinking, and doing is still consistent with your character. Since I got a scientist, should I use the science metaphors then? You can. Like, you can use science metaphors. You can bring science into it. Like, you can... I'm trying to think. Like...
If they were something like biology, or somebody who knows, like, who's, like, really into experimentation, they can almost, like, use... Almost like reading. I don't want to say, like, status. But like, you can use that to your advantage.
Oh yeah, Jana said talk about chemistry or their bond. Like, exactly. Yeah, catalyst. Those are the kinds of words that you brought up. That's great. Talk about things that they would notice. So one of our characters in volume 5 is like a hunter beast tamer, and so she's always around encroachers and monsters all of the time. So when she hooks up with Matt, the first thing she notices is he's got this scar that was clearly made by a specific type of venom that she has definitely seen before, and she needs to know like where it came from. And that's very her, because those are the things that she recognizes and wants to know more about. And it was like, hold the phone, where did you get this? Like, it brought the tension down just a little bit, but it added some banter between them, and it brought out her character to the scene, and it was really cute. So there's ways to add these sweet little things that feel more personalized to your scene and that will break this scene up from any other scene that you write with any different character. Yeah, attraction like protons and neutrons. Rocker world. I don't know what that one's. But yeah, absolutely. You can play with it. Add metaphors, add similes, add like, try and sit there and look through your character's eyes, what are they noticing first? Like, what do they see first? What are they hearing? Are there things that in their experience that they resonate really with, like really well with, so they're excited to like see it from this other person? Next, limit the word fuck as much as humanly possible. In fact, unless it's part of your character's regular dialogue, eliminate it entirely, please. There's the scenes that both characters are just like using the word fuck and screaming fuck over and over again. It's so frustrating. Like, when we went back and edited the first couple of volumes, we actually took out a lot of the heavier cursing because it just kind of seemed a little overbearing. And especially when you have characters that don't usually use heavy swearing like that, and all of a sudden they're dropping F-bombs just because like this is happening, it feels ingenuine, like entirely ingenuine to whatever your characters were before. Like, now we're just throwing them in, and I mean, this is what they scream in porn, so this is what I give them, and that's not really the way to go at all. Okay, next point is really important too. So intimate scenes are more than just the act itself. Too often I see not safe for work scenes treated like an anatomy lesson. Well, it's good to mention what happens physically. Remember to mention thoughts, emotions, reactions, and sensations. What else is happening? So there are a lot of scenes I read where it's just like the step-by-step on how to have sex. And like all of us know, I think, which is why we're reading this. So, I mean, if this is your first guide, then that's great. Like, go for it. But what builds tension, what makes characters relatable, what really creates these awesome scenes is when you have their reactions, you have the sensations they're experiencing. What is it doing to their emotions? Like, how are they reacting to everything that's happening? Are they okay with it? Are they really tense about it? Are they like second guessing it? Or like, just, there's a lot. So I usually like to do like an action and then a reaction and then like what the other partner is doing, and then kind of go through those and balance them. So that balance is hard, but it's so worth it in the end. Yeah, we don't need the exact dimensions. We don't need to know she's got the 34 double Ds and a 19-inch waist. A generous handful is good enough. It's okay, sir, but hey, welcome in. You don't need to have him grab her chest and be like, oh, this is 5 centimeters larger than last time. Like, please, don't do this. There's a lot that goes on. Like, you have shivers, or like you start feeling excited for something, or you want something else, or all these things. Saying glance or glands 5 times across 2 paragraphs. So try and keep in mind that like this is a very intimate experience, or at least should be for both parties. So instead of just looking at like, yep, this is the step-by-step, but what happened? Like, try and add in some dialogue, add in some thoughts, add in some reactions from both parties. The last one is how to refer to the private bits. And like I said, I'm trying not to get my Twitch stream banned. So I figure if I leave like the slideshow somewhat neutral, talk about it, we'll be okay. So fingers crossed. So if you can use illusions to your benefit, especially if it's a character that is very reserved, and I'll show you an example that I did on probably, I think, the next slide or slide after. So you don't have to, they have a weapon. You don't have to get super raunchy every single time. You don't have to start dropping cock or like cunt, or if the character is very laid back and usually is not thinking these things, it's okay to allude to what's happening or focus on something else. But going back to it, yeah, his sailor is risen at full mast. I would rather just say erection, because like that is a universal, no one is going to flinch and it's fine. But stuff like that is too much. That's back to the velvet wrap steel and the worshiping it out at her altar, like there's a degree of too far, in my opinion. Whereas it's just better to say what's happening, if that makes sense. I can't read it out loud without like, yeah, exactly like Kiwi said. If I'm laughing at the scene, like this is not good. So flowery language is totally cool, but limit it, like Sneaky said. I really enjoy writing almost poetic scenes like this sometimes, and I had a blast doing it with Sparga because it was a lot like my first two books. But even she gets to a point where she's just like, wow, and starts explaining things, and it's great. Yeah, it is. It's a range, and that range is heavily dependent too on your character's voice and what they're usually used to saying or talking about, or how their language reflects it. So bringing your character into the scene again is the most important thing that you can do to make this feel legitimate inside of your story. And your audience. Be careful. It is absolutely possible to write for everyone. I feel like I finally hit that point where like the scenes that we've got hit everyone that likes to read stuff like this. So just take care in how much flower you're using versus how much reality and what exactly you're describing. The language is tough. It is honestly very, very, very tough. But that's why you practice and just keep throwing them down and seeing what happens. Sky, the snail ones are just for you, honey. All right, I need wine. Hang on. I have never read my own scenes out loud, so here we go. I'm keen to have Rye read them instead, but I will be brave.
If you want me to.
Really?
Yeah.
You're such a good husband.
I know this is really hard for you.
I get so embarrassed.
Let me test the microphone.
I can do it. I'll do it. I can do it. I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm brave. Rye has robbed us. Rye will not rob us. I will do it. Okay. Is there generally a shift in language? Oh, thank you. I'll have a good night. A shift in language meaning what, Carmine? Like from normal day to bed, or? Because I'm talking about your story first, so this is kind of a good place for you to clarify for me what you mean. Well, he's typing. So Carla in Lich was one of the Valentine's Day one-shots that I did for Carmine. And Carla is a priestess. She's a priest of the undead, and Lich is a Lich. So let's see. Outside of confidence, would you see a character shift their language for an intimate moment? It depends on the character completely. And why I say that is because this is a really good example that I wanted to use for that. Carla is a priestess who's very like with her god and very chaste for the most part. So I was very careful not to use like any raunchy language with her at all for the whole commission, even during the sex part, because it didn't feel like it fit. Like her to just suddenly shift would not have felt right to me. So even in the little part that I'm including, you'll be able to tell like what's going on, but I don't actually explicitly say it, where some other characters might think like, oh, this is what's happening. But I wanted hers to be more of an illusion and less raunchy because she's a priestess, and that's not like how I read her. She was very kind and sweet and like wanted the best and was very excited to like see her lover again. So it didn't make sense for her to just turn full bore and go nuts. Does that make sense, Carmine? You can tell me if I read her totally wrong too, but that was my aim for Carla. Yeah, okay. Oh, more wine. Hang on.
It's alright.
Okay. Yeah, she always keeps her faith. There's no reason that she would suddenly just strip everything about her person because the clothes came off. Like that doesn't really jive. And I wanted Carla to still feel like Carla for every single word of the story. Okay. Whew. The orange glow of his magic caught her gaze, the same vivid orange she'd seen from Rain so many years before, like the center of a campfire. It was a sudden heat between her legs demanded her attention and cleared her train of thought. Butch's lips were still against hers, but a second tongue had found its way to her center. Her breathing hitched and her knees quivered. Their kiss muffled her moans and she wrapped her feet around his lower back. More? He asked inside her mouth. Yes. So, you know what's happening. Like, there's another tongue and it went places. But I didn't have to say that. I didn't have to be like, there was a tongue at her pussy. Like, it just, that would have totally thrown off the vibe completely for Carla. And then since she's very, usually, like, she's confident in her work, but this is very new for her for a while. Thank you so much, Sugar. We put up Fatalis's new box. So thank you.
Aww.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had her stutter a little bit, like the very last, just because she was a little nervous. She was a little unsure, and that's okay. Like a little bit of stuttering helps. A little bit of like hesitation, pausing. Like these are just things that build the tension. And I occasionally like to have them, like for Carla, she was looking for things to recognize Lich by. So like his orange glow, like his magic was something that she knew. And I let her brain wander off a little bit, like, oh my gosh, like this was just like when we were together before. And I remember it. It reminded me of a campfire. And oh God, what's happening? Like, this is a normal thing that happens. Sometimes your brain just kind of goes, but then something brings you back and that makes it feel real. Like that makes this connection feel very real to me. And I thanked Carmine because he said he liked it, so I can only... Again, these are all my takes, so it's totally okay. Your mileage may vary. So the next one is Jack and Zarir. Zarir is a drider, and Jack is the main character in Snail Girls. And I loved writing this scene because Sky let me write this scene. So Zarir is like the only drider left alive, and she wants a kid, and the Snail Girls need help from the spiders. So she's like, yeah, you can have it, but I want him for a night. So they kind of start talking, and they, like, just to start everything, their foreplay is actually them talking back and forth a little bit, just so each of them can kind of ease into it. Thank you, Karma. I'm so glad. That makes me very, very happy to hear. I love capturing other people's characters correctly. Like, that's so important to me. But with Jack, they start going, like, they actually get close and start doing things, and he laughs, and it just stops everything. And she's like, what? Well, Snail Girls have these darts that just, like, are aphrodisiacs, because snails have those, and I decided to give them to Snail Girls. And he's like, I don't remember the last time I've done this without being darted. And it was just like a really cute moment between them that broke the tension a little bit, but it built that bond between them. Communication builds bonds, which is really, really important, like throughout sex, throughout the relationship, throughout everything. So this is from Jack's point of view, and kind of what's going on with Zarir. So Zarir trailed her slender fingers through Jack's long hair. Ah, yes. Flying told me of these fascinating darts. Her nails grazed his scalp, and she tightened her grip. She bent further down and nibbled his ear. Shall I recall them to administer one to you? So, like, hair grabbing and, like, nails and head and nibbling ear. Like, this is all foreplay. That is all tension-building foreplay. Jack asked and reached for her chest without thinking. No, that's his reaction. So you have foreplay, you have reaction. Good, she murmured into his ear. I would prefer you to enjoy yourself while uninhibited. Her tongue mapped his jawline until her teeth found his throat. Jack groaned and tilted his head to the side, allowing her easier access. You really never had a human partner? For a woman who'd never seen a man before, she certainly seemed to know how to get a reaction out of him. Jack is very kicked back and laid back, so that reflects a lot of times, even though his narrative is in third person. I try and give him that, like, little bit wandering thought, little bit curiosity. Like he's always wanting to know more and like very open-minded about pretty much everything, and he has to be because he's living in a monster world. But Zarir, on the other hand, is very proper and prim, and she speaks almost like a queen, which she's the queen of spiders, so it worked out. So this is like a really great example of the characters interacting, talking, banter, foreplay, using their language, tension. It like this has everything in this tiny little slot. Tell me more. I'll send you the file later. And even in this little tiny bit, like you can really see how Zarir is as a person slash writer and how Jack is as a person. Like it doesn't take very long to get invested, right, Chocobo? Like you're already like, where's the rest of it? You don't know anything about the story, but you want to know, which this is how you build character and reader care really, really fast. Water, hang on. So my last example is Jazz and Tristan. And I included this one because this chapter pulled in the most patrons for work chapter in Catgirl. So Jazz is like the leader of an underground mafia, essentially, and thank you, Rune. Tristan is the man for that island, and so they're kind of staying with them. And Jazz is like, well, I want to test him out. So for this chapter specifically is from Jazz's perspective. So I took her voice completely into account when I was writing this. So even the first paragraph, they reached her room and she closed the door behind him. Dropping his hand, she sauntered to the foot of her four-post bed, then leaned against it. How shall we begin? She purred. Am I to lead as I do in all things? So here's the very first thing. Her four-post bed is very important to her. No one else would have noticed a freaking four-post bed. That's her thing. Sauntered, that's a word that I would really only use for Jazz because she knows exactly what she's doing. And then for her to ask, like, am I to lead as I do in all things? That already tells you she's the boss lady. She's kind of tired of being the boss lady. And she's hinting at him like, hey, if you don't want to disappoint me, maybe you should do this. Tristan stared at the floor and breathed deeply, his shoulders rising and falling with it. When he looked back up at her, the apprehension in his features had all but vanished. Determination glittered in his blue eyes, and he closed the distance between them in 4 confident steps. So like Sneaky just said, Tristan is usually pretty shy, but he has a lot of experience. So when I mentioned before that sometimes your characters can switch, like if, depending on what their normal demeanor is versus how they are like in the bedroom, Tristan is a very powerful switch in that because, like Sneaky said, he has literally hundreds of girls of experience. So this is a thing that he has done over and over and over again. His character and personality does not change. He is still very caring. He is still always aware of what is happening and making sure that his partner is enjoying themselves. That does not escape him. And he's still using a lot of like artistic language and descriptions. He just becomes like a super dumb as soon as things start to get heated. So it's okay if your character has that experience and swaps. Like, it's understandable because, like we said, like Tristan has that experience. He's allowed to be confident in this. Like he knows what he's doing. And as soon as things start, it's like, oh, nope, I know where it's going. Let's go. There's a carnal side to you after all, Jazz murmured. I was beginning to wonder. Despite his height ending at her nose, he held her stare without flinching. You want me to lead? Jazz smirked. You are the expert here, are you not? Tristan reached for the leather belt holding her shorts to her hips, unlatched the clasp and pulled it free in one smooth motion. As you wish, said. So, when you start these scenes, it's really fun to describe however they're like stripping each other down, honestly, whether it's tearing clothes off, going piece by piece, belt, shorts, top, bra. Sometimes like you don't, you just take the skirt, whatever. So that though, like just that act can already set up how that scene is going to go. Is it very fast? Is it really like, are they going slow? Are they taking their time? That's a really great and easy way to set the scene and decide how your characters are going to react to each other. I've had it sometimes where like especially this chapter, they go back and forth a lot on dominance because that's just who they are as people. So like that belt travels around the whole freaking room at some point. So you can use these things to your advantage. And yes, we will talk about pacing very, very soon here. But yeah, exactly like Sneaky said, he's now on very familiar grounds. He's new to a lot, but this is his forte. So even if he's like, I'm not sure if I'm the good leader, I'm not sure if I'm the one to actually do this, I don't know if I can run my island. Put him in a bedroom though, and he's like, no, I've got this. This is the one thing I'm really fucking good at. So we're gonna go. Oh my god, I did it. I read them. Here's one more. It's fine. Okay. Pacing. Speaking of pacing, thanks, Chocobo. So in sex scenes, you need to make every single sentence count. If it's not building character, tension, or moving the scene forward, get rid of it or adjust it so that it does. I live and die by this rule. I will not get off this hill. This is so important for pacing. And it doesn't matter if it's a really long scene or if it's a really short scene. Pacing and making all of what you're saying important is what will keep your reader, what will keep your tension, what will keep the scene going. That's very, very important. You can say a lot with very little and trust your reader to take away exactly what you intended. I haven't posted this chapter publicly yet. It just went on to Patreon the other night. But Jack is very sweet and enabled me to write a side quest for Sunrai and Magni, who are like two of the biggest villains in the story. But we all wanted it, so here we are. Yeah, you don't want your spicy scene to be boring. So with saying a lot with very little. So in this scene, this is like right after they were fighting and then like they just kind of tackle one another. My king, he choked her again, moving his mouth from her chest to her lips. Magni, who corrected against her skin. So just that sentence, like if you've read the story at all, Magni is very, very much like King Magni. Like he will correct it without question. So the fact that he corrected her to like say his name says a lot about his character, about Sunrai, about their relationship, about their history, about what's happening in the scene. And he said that in one word. And you don't need, like, I didn't need to go in there. This is from Magni's point of view, but I didn't need to him to say like he wanted her to think of him like a, I see this all the time, like a peer, or he needed her to see that, like, you don't explain, like let your reader think on it, let them sit on it, let them read it again and go, wow, that's really big for him. Like let them feel your characters out too. I was really happy with this. Sunray leaned into his grasp and bit his lower lip. Her gaze exuded a challenge that her words could not. He closed his eyes and plunged his tongue between her teeth, stealing what remained of her breath from her throat. Then he let her writhe against him for just a few more heartbeats. I have never done those ellipses like that. I really love how they came out. Be really careful on ellipsis use and over punctuating. I just watched a review on a very popular series right now, and apparently there's a lot of like this where every single word has a period after it to like punctuate it. Every so often, stuff like that is great. It's a visual, it cues your reader, it sets the tone, but it should be sprinkled. Exactly like Mana said, treat it like poetry, not a crutch. Like in the many, many sex scenes I have written for Cat Girls, I have never done this, but for here, like right in this scene, it felt so correct and it felt so great and I love it, but I won't likely use it again, probably ever. Because it's very him, like it's very his character. He wants to be in control. He wants to hold on to that and loves like every second that it's happening. Too much spice ruins the dish. I mean, we all love spice here, but too many sprinkles will ruin your cake. So sprinkle it in. Chocobo, I know he had asked me like how long a scene should be. And I have scenes that run from 1,800 words to 5,000 words. And kind of like Al asked earlier with what do you do with 3+ people? So the hot spring scene has like 5 characters in it. And I think that chapter hit like over 5,000 words just because if there was 5 characters in it, I had to make sure that everyone was having a good time somewhere. Okay, Carmine, no worries. See you in a few. So the pacing is really determined by your characters and by what you are trying to accomplish. It is so many hands, Valerie. Is there a limit on how long your words needed? I don't think so. As long as you're going through and reading it and going, yes, this sentence builds character, builds tension, moves the scene forward. Like, if your pacing feels like it's good, then it's good. And my first point, I don't really include dialogue too much, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So obviously, like sounds and reactions, that's still like dialogue noises can still count as like a character reaction and still important for developing what they're feeling in that moment. But you don't want to overdo that either. So you can have a scene that goes on forever. Like if this is the pinnacle scene in your book and you want them to do like every freaking thing that has ever been done, the most important part is making sure that for your reader, this is doing something for them too. Like it's somehow developing the character, somehow changing the plot, and your characters are going to walk away changed from this somehow. I think that's the most important part. It's just deciding what you want your reader to take away from all of this. And if it's just, I wanted to write smut and that's it, then just write smut and that's it. And then the last bullet, what actions occur is dependent on what you, the writer, want to see and if it feels right for the characters. So Chocobo had asked how I pick what the characters are going to do with one another. It's another situation where I definitely let my characters talk to me and kind of decide how the flow of things is going to go. And it's also has to do with their experience. So when Carmine asked, like, how do you show experience? That's a really great way, is to kind of limit what they're comfortable with doing or what they're able to do, or if this is a very first time for either one of them, make that a conversation and bring it up because that makes them feel more human. There's always communication between partners, and it's really, really important to remember that, because if there's not, then you're kind of missing a really pivotal part of spicy scenes in general. So yeah, just make sure that what they're doing feels right, that it's not suddenly this is his first time, but now he's a porn star, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Any questions on pacing? Do you have fast, slow, push, pull? Oh, thank you, Valerie. So kind of like I mentioned with Jack and Zarir, and then even a couple of times with, I think with a lot of scenes, like there will be kind of a little bit of humor that could technically, quote unquote, break the tension. But honestly, I feel like cute moments are ones that kind of make you laugh, like legitimately laugh, not laugh because the language is so off, but you're reading it and you're like, oh, that's really funny. Like him going like, oh my God, I don't know when the last time I could do this without a dart. That still to me is building up to the tension and is still a part of the rise. So having a little bit of breakup like that is good. And it honestly, like, it doesn't have to be a constant like roller coaster climb. Things can slow down a little bit. Things can like speed up a little bit. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Resonate. There's, I think it's in the first book. There's that scene with Cannoli and Matt, like the very first scene where they're alone together and like they start kissing and like things are getting really heated. And then she's like, can we just cuddle? And it stops. So, but that was very her character. She was scared. She didn't want to try and keep going. So it's okay if you have times where things seem like they're building up to something and then it just kind of cuts out or slows down for a few. and then they actually start like getting together later, or it makes the next scene like really cool because they stopped before, but now they're all kinds of go. So it can really be dependent on the story that you're trying to tell and what you want to tell your audience about your characters. Like with Cannoli, I wanted to make it very clear that she was nervous, that she had some reservations about the whole thing, and it was worth just waiting for her, because when they finally like do have a scene, it's one of the two that everybody remembers. So like, that helps a lot. You just got to get Jake and Selena started on a relationship before you can use this. Yeah, and a couple of people asked me if I could do like a romance paddle, and we'll talk about romance later. This is pretty much specifically for when the romance is there and now the spicy scenes can start. But it's good to, especially if you want your reader to like grow with their romance and go, and it's a slow burn. Obviously there's those very quick burn moments, like Jazz and Tristan only knew each other for a few chapters and then bam. But again, it's dependent on your story, dependent on your characters, dependent on you as a writer and what you want to do with it. Okay, so this is another really big one, and I'm going to take a very short break to refill my water and put on another ad so that everyone who doesn't have a sub doesn't miss anything. So give me 3 minutes, go grab a drink, and I will be right back. Okay, so it's claiming I recently ran another ad, which is a problem. But whatever. We'll continue. If anyone gets an ad, just yell and I'll stop for a minute. It's not a problem at all. Sorry. I've tried to learn how to time these things better. And thank you so much, Sky! And thanks, Terma. I'm glad it's awesome. I am redder than I think I've ever been, so I'm trying, and I will try and slow down a little bit. I'm blushing so bad I could die. Ah! Okay. How is everyone so far? Still doing good? Time for communication and consent. We've talked about this a few times now, but it's very important to talk about it again and have its own slide dedicated to it. Okay. Hi, Chocobo! Thank you! Vitalis is gonna have a friggin' bougie home soon. That's exciting. We're already at 50 bucks. Yeah, I was just looking at his cage and was like, oh my god, he's so big. Oh, Mana, thank you. I always get a little nervous because I know this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of writers, a lot of readers, but it's something that I'm very passionate about and I care about, and I feel like everyone, myself included, we can always do better. Like it's worth practicing, it's worth perfecting. It's, if you want to make it part of your story, it's worth it to work and make it part of your story and not just slapped in there because we wanted to get this. Oh, no worries, Terma. If you have any questions, Terma, I can go back and go over it again. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Chocobo. Yeah, I take this very seriously, and especially writing for clients. I found that getting myself in their character's headspace and making sure that it's very specific to their character is so important. I did a commission for a visual novel last year, I think, where he just needed me to finish off some like really short scenes that he gave me like 15 characters and said, all right, I just needed 500 word scenes for each of these characters. But even in 500 words, I was able to bring the characters through. So he's like, I want you to rewrite all of them. So it's important to know how to bring a character into intimate scenes. Like that's what makes them feel real. Yeah, right. So then I'm writing like 40 scenes of 500 words. It was fun though. It was fun to try and make them all sound different. Like it was such a cool challenge to write these micro scenes but still feel real. Thank you, Jana. So hopping right into communication. I've said it a couple times, but it's imperative for trust between characters. Every single intimate scene should have dialogue and should let your characters talk. Even if one of your characters is wearing a ball gag or is wearing a gag or is somehow cannot talk, the other character will likely be talking to them somehow. A great writer can do a ton with not a lot of words. Agreed. But dialogue gives you a lot of opportunities in not safe for work scenes. It helps you build tension. It offers the reader a quick break from the action. So it helps you get away from the anatomy lesson and turns it back into an intimate scene with people that are involved instead of just, yep, that happened and we're done. It can build the character. It defines the boundaries. It offers a way to transition to another position, establishes consent. Like there's so much that dialogue in a sex scene can do. It is very, very good. And with like, even with the positions, you can say like, I want to try this. Like one of the characters can say like, can we do this? Can we try this? And right off the bat, that's asking for consent and getting you into your next transition. Terma, please don't be nervous. I know you missed the beginning, but this is absolutely judgment-free zone. No one is going to laugh. No question is silly. If I don't feel like I can answer it, I'll just let you know. That's it. There will be no laughing or angry or shaming, because if any shaming, then Lynx gets really mad and there will be voting. So another thing we talked about briefly that we're going to talk about now is true dialogue versus noises. Noises are fine. Noises are great. Going overboard on reactionary noises can be cringe-inducing. So I have my own rule that I keep noises at a 3-character limit. Even if it's like this, that's it. You get 3. Or like this. I just cringe so hard when I see like this. That's a sound you make when you're struggling in the bathroom. Not for a sex scene. And every so often they're great, but if that's all you're putting in there, then please change it to something else. Like, find something that they can say about the character. Constipated hippo. He's drowning. Please save him. In that vein, also goes into, this is the same bucket of way too many noises and the hard planes and the worshipping and altars. Also, how big and so tight. Okay, so these two things can be mentioned every so often, but it is so exhausting if you have like one guy and he has like 3 or 4 sex scenes in the book, and all the girl is telling him is how big he is so empty to me. It doesn't establish anything. It doesn't bring anything to light about the characters. It does nothing. Just like, if all he's noticing about the 4 girls he's sleeping with is how tight they are, does that mean that like each one of them is getting tighter? When does it stop? I feel like there should be some kind of peak there where he stops noticing these things, but somehow has not. Yeah, you see my 5 centimeters? And I get really tired of seeing like, oh yes, he's so big. Like, if it is some kind of remarkable thing, okay. And if it's her first time, it's okay. It's okay to mention a little bit, but when that is all you're talking about, that it gets really old. Like, find something else to talk about. Be more, yeah, I'm agreed with Sneaky, be more descriptive of the reaction itself rather than noise being made. So instead of just putting in like the longest noise ever, talk about backs arching, goosebumps, sweat, biting lips, trying to react, writhing fingers, curling toes. There's so many shivers. Like, there's so many options that you can do to describe that builds tension and builds character and builds the reaction that aren't just screaming into the room or to somebody's ears. Agreed, Mana. It's just, at some point it's going to hurt. Consent. So I don't personally believe that consent needs to be an extensive, fully talked out thing unless that is very important to the character. So if it's super important to the character that they have like a contract type deal before they start taking clothes off, absolutely, like, make sure that conversation happens. But having 2 characters that are already in a relationship, that are already even looking at doing this, asking, is this okay? Or how does that feel? And the other character responding to that, that's consent. It's as easy as that. It feels very natural to the character. I mean, I feel like even if you have a partner and you've had the same partner forever, if you're trying something new, they're still going to ask you like, is this okay? Like, does this feel good? Should I switch? Do you change? Like, there's always a conversation going on. And that's what builds your consent. So you don't need to have like a checklist of items that you have to go through that your character has to agree to. Yes. Do you like it? Like, do you like this? And if they say yes or no, stop. Okay, we're changing it. Yes, great. That's the green light. I know that's actually like really big within BDSM community. Instead of safe words, you have red light, yellow light, green light. And if like something is going and you're not really sure, yellow, slow down, red, stop. That's a thing that you can use if you're trying something really crazy and you would rather kind of slow it down. But I've never used that in my story. I prefer to go like, can you slow down? Like just flat out, like, can you go a little slower, speed up, like directions, just constantly giving each other vocal cues and what they're doing. So how's the weather? That will break your tension, Carmine, nor does that move the plot or the characters or anything else. But it will tell you how the weather's going.
It'll be funny.
And then the very last one. So one of my biggest pieces of feedback that I received about my scenes in the last couple of years, this was 3 years ago and I haven't looked back. One of my clients told me that I was really good about building the tension, really good about executing the moment, and then I just like dropped off with the aftercare. And I'm like, you know, you're right. I missed it. It's a missed opportunity. So I feel like aftercare and cuddles are very important. So not like just a little bit of pillow talk between the characters, or like kind of how they're feeling, check-ins, just things like descending from the high or trying to feel how it went. Like, was it good for you? Like, you don't have to use that question, you know, but things like that. And honestly, you can use this as a literary device because you can cut it short for effect. So if a character gets up and leaves, that can be a huge moment of conflict. I used that with Tristan, Matt, and Sparga, where Tristan is so uncomfortable that he just gets up and goes, and Matt's like, okay, you're not like a hit and run guy, are you okay? And then at the hot spring episode, Matt has no idea what he's doing, leaves Kiki and Saris behind, and they're mad at him because they woke up without him, and they're like, thanks, buddy. So those are things that can actually add to your character and can add to the world, where he didn't know what he was doing. He's still pretty new at this, and ever since then he's been a lot better about staying there and letting know, like, okay, we're gonna get up. And with Tristan, like, it was so off for him that it had everybody worried. So yes, definitely follow through the whole thing unless you are making the choice on purpose, and then use that as a character builder. Okay, how are we doing? Okay. That does count, yes. I'm glad I have your attention. I'm still giggling at Carmine. So, how's the weather? Like, how bored are you? I'm sorry, Carmine. Does it need to be bigger or tighter? All right. Next, using intimacy for character growth. You've heard me say it a lot, but intimacy should be advancing your character, and it's a great way to advance your character if this is part of your narrative. I'm not saying every single narrative should have sex scenes. I understand that your audience might not be that, or what you're writing in might not be that. But if you do decide to start including intimate scenes that aren't just fade to black, even if they are fade to black, like, let them be a way to advance a character. That's a really big part of the human experience. It was so tight and big on the hard night before the altar ball. Get out! Techniques still apply. Cool. Thank you, Mana. Also, if you are doing different cultures, different backgrounds, you can Google it. Look up real life other cultures and backgrounds to see what their views on intimacy are, because you can use that to build your world and its inhabitants. So, for example, with cat girls, pretty much the only time that they will be with a man is going to be their first and last time. So firsts don't apply to them. Like, none of them are really going to understand that, like, Matt's first time is important to him, because all they get is one. And he's the guy, so, like, why does that matter? Or we've seen other societies that might, like, agree to group sex instead of one-on-one, or you can look at things like polyamory. There's going to be a lot of different views that you can use to your advantage that will change the worldview and change your character's views. With my first two books, like I said, like I made rings, which were a triad, and they were like, you go through essentially a ceremony to become somebody's ring. And there were a lot of people in the world that didn't like that. So they would get kind of cursed out a lot. These are the kinds of things that you can play with and see how it will affect your world. Questions that you can ask yourself. So the level of exposure and vulnerability requires an immense amount of trust, no matter their views on intimacy. Is that something your character is ready for? Let this add to the tension. Circling back to Carmine's experience question, if this is their first time, that's going to make them probably pretty nervous. If they're very, very overconfident, like, where are they getting their confidence from? Did they watch a lot of hentai? Have they been, what? Like, why do they feel like they're ready for this and ready for another human being? What has been the most dynamic change or development change from intimacy for you written? Like, in my writing, what's changed for me? Okay, so hey Toasty. Rereading my first books, those scenes are way too fast. And even when I did the first few with Cat Girls, I felt they were too fast. One really huge change that we made with Matt was going back to the first book, like after post Yomi. Like, he has Myron, and in the first version of it, he and Myron actually have like a really hot and heavy night. And when I went back and I read it, I'm like, this is wrong. So I toned it down to just very short, and he gets up and leaves, and it's very much his character because he's uncomfortable with it and he's still trying to focus with it. And I'll talk about it a little bit down, but for me, that I've changed, I've learned to slow down and take my time and explore more of my characters within the scenes. My first two books, I feel like the scenes went too fast, and I could actually include more to them rather than leave a lot of stuff out. More character reactions, more sensations, more things that it's like doing to them mentally than I did before. And then also, like I said before, adding that kind of aftercare moment, like that, the end to the scene, like getting to the end and letting them both kind of come down together and talk about these things was really, really important. Yeah. Yeah, Valerie, we'll talk about that in just a second. Why can't you just say a bunch of bad words and call it intimacy? Hey, struggle. Yeah, that's not how it works. After Yomi was better that way, theme-wise, character, I liked it better. I'm with you, Chocobo. Like, it feels a lot better where it's at right now with Myron. Like, it was way too detailed. He was way too comfortable, and he was like, yeah, time to get back on the horse, and I'm fine. And like, that's not how he should have been at all. So I went back and put a lot more of his character and his situation into it than I did the first time, and was a lot more careful with it. So I've definitely learned from ghostwriting, from commissions, from my own work, just to slow down and give things like the full attention and take time on these scenes. Like, these honestly usually take me a whole day to write one sex scene because of how long I go through each one of those sentences and change them and make sure that the flow is right and make sure everything sounds good. So yes, patience with your characters. Be very, very patient. Be okay with spending a whole day on 1,500 to 2,000 words to make sure it reads like your character should. Into the next point. This is another part that, okay, Valerie, thank you. Have a great stream. I've also learned to start including and asking of myself as I write these scenes, what do you want out of your characters emotionally by the time the scene is over? Did anything change? Perceptions, ideas, desires? So no matter how many times like this character may have slept with other people, I try and find something that changes or shifts just a little bit with them, just to like renew them, like give them a new idea, give them a little bit of growth. I feel like it just, they should walk away having learned something new, whether it was about the other character, about themselves, about the world, whatever it is. Like, give them some new piece of information to leave the scene with, because then once more your scene will feel like it fits into the story, fits into the world, and fits into the narrative, and less like you had just tacked it in there because I need a sex scene. It'll feel more like the characters actually wanted this, which is what you want. Oh, you like the new enclosure? Yay! Yay, Cherry. I'm glad you're ordering her a heat panel too. That thing works so well for Anya. And then I had mentioned it's a little bit, a couple more. Exactly, it's progression, character development through intimacy. I like to say a lot that I would much rather write a scene that feels like it was purposefully put there. Like, I honestly, I won't write a scene into CAC rolls unless I feel like it is going to push some characters or make some character growth or push the plot line somewhere, or give you a better insight to the world. Like, even when I was sitting on like the Magni and Sunrise scene, I'm like, no, I have ideas. And it gives you a way better insight to their relationship and to the world. So it's not just there because Lynx just wanted to write this scene. It actually builds the story more. So having these scenes that help you build characters, story, and plot is really, really important. You're learning more about the erotic side of literature. It's amazing to see how good and how bad some writing can be. Well, Strago, you are in the nick of time to learn some of what makes it good or bad. The spicy scene is all well and good, especially that it's plot relevant and either supports character development or is much better. Agreed. Like, it's 100% agree. Like I said at the very beginning, if I don't care about your characters, if I don't care about the world, then I'm really not going to care about what they do in bed. So make me care about them first. Like, show me why I should care about these characters. And then, yeah, I want to see what happens. Like, where does this intimacy take them? Because it should take them somewhere and not just be there. Oh, there's a huge audience for Spice for sake of, it's enormous. But this is just my take on if you want to write Spice that actually makes sense. What do you mean, doubt? Have you never heard of 50 Shades of Grey, Strago? Is this new for you? You think that's plot? You're not that. That's good. So in the realm of humans, and not in, like, we'll assume just average us background, how someone's first time goes can impact or warp the perception of the world at large. So this ties in with the consent part. So if somebody does not have consent on their first round, that can absolutely twist how they look at the world and how they feel about intimacy as a whole. My example is Matt with Yomi versus Matt with Sphere at the end of Volume 1. So Matt had his consent taken away from him, and that has a very, very long-lasting impact on him. Saphira is like, she's very healing, and her scene with him is very healing, and it's very sweet. But as we see Matt go along in the other books, he always wants control. He's uncomfortable losing control, and that's because he doesn't want that to happen again. So I let that affect his character and be a huge part of his character. And it shows in like every scene that he has, he's not comfortable with just like letting someone else run the show. And these are the kinds of things that you can use to your advantage with the character growth. I'm not saying obviously let all of your characters let this happen. It was more than that with her. But as an example, you can absolutely let how their first time go, like decide, like maybe they had a really awesome first time and then everything after that really sucked. They're struggling. I had one commission where it's like buried in my computer and I really should revive it at some point. But her first time is actually really disappointing. And then her second time is awesome. And then she's like chasing that high forever. And it's driving her insane. So you can absolutely run with that. Exactly. There's continuity there. They grow, they heal, they can be traumatized, they can swear off intimacy forever, they can swear off romance forever. I made it so that he's very uncomfortable being touched without warning first for a while. Like, you can let these things affect them, like it's going to affect them. And then the last bullet point has tropes that I am personally not a fan of. And again, this is not me. There are readers for this all over the place, and it's great. These are just my personal, I don't care for them. First off is the instant Chad. This means a few things. Oh goodness! Thank you so much for the raid! Hello, Dead's Head. Hi! We're talking about writing spicy scenes. So it's an 18+ panel. Hello! Thanks for coming in. Look at the pretty art. Oh, we talk about spicy. Did you have a good stream? Okay. So the instant Chad refer to a few things. First and foremost, 3 micro stories. Good job. When you have a version that shows up in another world or just starts like getting girls, I see this a lot in harem. Like, I think this is where I mostly see it, is in harem. And this like 18-year-old guy has never had a partner in his life, but he is like the best thing in bed. And I've seen it on both sides, but I mostly see it with male characters. And that just floors me because it's impossible. So please let your characters experience things. Also, where harem, usually with guys, he shows up and all of the girls are falling all over him, even though he has no idea how to manage any kind of relationship. It really drives me nuts when they meet a girl and they say something akin to like, oh, she's not in my harem yet. Like, how pompous of you to assume that she wants to be there. But of course she does. Why wouldn't she want to be there? He's the instant Chad. It's part of the hidden skill tree. Oh, I've been missing this all along. I didn't know. That makes so much. There's a Chad, instant Chad skill tree. That's awesome.
Oh, I want to read.
Yeah, give Matt an instant Chad skill tree so that the girls actually love him, like right on site. The instant ramen of Chads, 25 cents, and heat him in a bowl of water. But somehow he's great in bed. How is this happening? Second trope I am really not a fan of are villains whose villainy relies solely on sexual assault. Like, that is the whole reason they are villains. There are many, many, many reasons that someone can be a villain, and it doesn't have to be this. And I see this happen a lot with guy villains who just like take all kinds of girl characters and do what they want with them. And I'm like, can they do something else, please? It doesn't feel realistic to me at all, and it just paints guys in the worst picture, and it makes me sad. So find some other reason for them to be evil. Let's see. There's a whole subgenre of lit RPG erotica surrounding an instant Chad class that is not my favorite. Oh yeah, it's out there. It's not my favorite either. The characters are on a sailing ship, they bang their heads on the walls, and once just fell on the floor. Interesting. Okay. Hey King, how's it going? Yeah, it feels very shallow. It doesn't feel like a real character to me. It feels like they just showed up and got everything they want and didn't have to work for it at all.
They're
They're
puppets.
puppets.
It's a puppet show.
It's a puppet show. Thank you so much for the follow, Pink. You are wonderful. Yeah, it's like we've talked about that in our character panel last time too, where do you want people or do you want a puppet show? Like, if you want people, then they should have to experience these things and learn how to do these things. It is, King, right? Like, it's just a really cheap tactic. Thank you, Pink. It's going great. Thank you. I love writing erotic scenes, and I love making sure that they make sense in the context of the story and aren't just like, I threw them in because I felt like it here. So I want to help other people. This is like my bread and butter. Yeah, Chocobo, a lot of stories right now, unfortunately, feel like that. So yeah, it's worth exploring more things. Why have character development when you can smash your dolls together? Dear E.L. James. My third trope I am not a fan of are collectible females. So 3 of these so far are in harem. I see this on the opposite end too. So I call it collectible females, but I have also seen many otomes where the guys are just like the same way. But essentially when the characters are cookie cutter and you get to their intimate scenes and they literally do the same thing every time. Like they lay there, be pillow princesses and scream. That's a collectible female. And then banged all night. She loved it. That's a fade to black, and that's great. We like fade to blacks. That's totally fine. All in line and in awe of the MC. Absolutely. And in awe of how big the your MC is. That's usually like the females are lying there telling you how big you are and oh my god, I can't take it. And then they do this thing and then that's it. It makes me sad. Oh no, she's filling up his hard planes. But there's usually no worshiping in her altar. It's just, you know, he's just going to bang her and that's it. That's okay, King. Thank you so much for stopping in. I appreciate it. Tropes like this make me really sad because when we show cat girls to people, they look at the cover and that is exactly what they expect it's going to be. Instant Chad, collectible females, 0 character progression. We have like 50 plus cat girls and every single one of them has their own personality, their own background, their own story. Like Ryan and I work so hard to make sure that these characters feel real. And even no matter how many scenes that I write, like sexy or otherwise, I want them all to feel real and I want it to feel particular to them and it should fit their personality. It should fit who they are. So no matter how many characters you have, it's so important to understand that everyone's experience is going to be different. It's like if you want a puppet show and you want all your puppets to look the same, you just swap the hair color, that's great. But if you want something to feel real, then you've really got to give each character time and be patient. Like Mona said, be patient with your characters and be patient with their personalities and try and understand them as best as you can, even if it's not a personality trait that you have. Try and get in their shoes and look at it from their point of view. Like that's what makes writers so fun, is we get to look at all of these perspectives and try and live their lives, even if it's not ours. Like at least we can try and understand. So the last trope that I'm not a fan of, I coined this last year. It's called convenient lesbians. I don't see this very, so I've read a pretty good amount of like boy love and yaoi and stuff, and I don't see this nearly as often in that as I do in Yuri, in anything with women who become lovers. Convenient lesbians happens when 2 girls get together and one of them looks at the other and says, oh, you don't know how to please your boyfriend? Why don't I show you? And then it's not gay. It's if I'm your best friend. And then, oh, they're suddenly having sex. And it makes me so mad. Because, like, they have never, ever, ever shown any inclination towards, you know, liking girls or, like, being attracted to girls. But it's going to work now because you know, their husband really needs you to learn how to do these things. This happened in Handmaiden. This happened in Citrus, except it wasn't husband. It was, oh, you don't know what to do for your boyfriend? Why don't you let me show you? I'm your best friend. It has happened in so many Yuri. Like 99% of the Yuri I've read, that's how it starts. Not because they like other girls, because they're trying to learn how to please their boyfriends. It drives me insane. So I'm sure it happens on the other end, but I feel like relationships of convenience like that are very empty when they hit their intimacy scenes, because there's really what's on the line there. Like, yeah, he might find you cheating, I guess, but you're not supposed to have feelings, but all of a sudden you're catching feelings even though you've never felt this before. So tread very, very carefully when you go along that line. Like, those don't feel like real people to me. That just feels like, yep, you just wanted this to happen. This was the best way you decided how it was going to go. So those are my top 4 tropes that I cannot stand, and they drive me insane. Yeah, Sneaky, that's why I said, like, I know conveniently gay happens a lot in Otome. I know Otome and reverse harem have a lot of guys that are actually girls, but they say they're guys. Like, there's just, it's so gray. But like a lot of the yaoi that I've read and like the boy love stuff that I've read, those are usually just the 2 guys and not like one girl and then a bunch of dudes. So, yeah. I wonder if Sky is still here. Look, it's Jack, Mia, and Sky. We're going to talk about fantasy and reality, fantasy versus reality. So first, I'm going to start with low fantasy intimacy. So by low fantasy, I mean more realistic, like Victorian, romantasy, just kind of typical stuff. For me, when writing any scene at all, it doesn't matter who's involved, I find that it's good to tread a line between hentai and reality, or like porn and reality, like not swinging one direction or the other. For example, like people getting together in showers or pools, like this actually does not work well in real life. Or, you know, positions that you're like, I don't think my body could go into that, but you've seen it somewhere. Like, it can be fun to write those in, and like people like to see stuff like that. So it's okay to sprinkle that in, as long as you are not, once again, going into he's like 14 inches long and that's all we're going to talk about today. So try and go between, like, find elements that you like about fantasy and find elements that you like about reality and write that, because the more realistic elements that you can add, the more real the scene is going to feel. Oh my god, right, Sneaky? Convention hot tubs, like public hot tubs in general. I don't care if it's convention, if it's hotel, anything, no. Will not go into a public hot tub. You cannot pay me enough. But hey, writing a hot tub scene is cool. Like, I've read some scenes where they bang in the ocean and I'm like, okay, the thought of that is hot, but really, the sand would be so bad. All that salt water and then the sand, oh my god. Yes, exactly, Chocobo. That's exactly what I mean. Try and take that fantasy element and make it more real. So put some depth into it. But what if it was also a time machine? So Merfolk, we'll actually talk about it in a second. Like, I'll go into high fantasy in just a moment. Like, this is more low fantasy, human. We're like, yeah, pretty much human. That's where it kind of stops. Hey, Morales, thank you so much for the follow. You are wonderful. What if everyone is a Disney princess? I'm not writing any of that as not safe for work. But if you want to, that is all for you to explore. The movie. Oh, the Hot Tub Time Machine. I never saw that movie. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think Seckler got you the subscription last night. I will let him know. I'll tell him thank you. Next point in human versus human that is important to understand, and also treading the line between hentai and reality, are how many rounds can a character feasibly go and how much can a character take? So there's a game called Starless. I don't know if anyone's played it. Don't suggest it if you haven't. It's an eroge. But one of the first scenes, this guy comes like 9 times in the first scene. And by the 7th time, I'm just sitting there like, I feel really bad for the cleaning lady. It's the cleaning maid. I start wondering about these scenes. So before you decide that your Insta chat can come like 9 times, consider the cleaning lady. And it feel out whether that feels real or if that is something that your character can feasibly do before that. Yeah, right, Rune? That was my first thought. That's one way to start a story. It was the first sex scene in that freaking eroge, and I'm like, oh, this is setting up for something nice. I didn't get much farther. It was too much. Like, it totally broke every rule of reality that I have ever heard. And on the other side, how much can a character take? Whoever said earlier, like, it starts to hurt at some point. Yes. If your guy has like a monster-sized cock, it's not going to be fun for a super long time. So be nice to your girls, because your girl is gonna read that and be like, this is uncomfortable. Again, ask who your audience is. Like, be aware of who your audience is, and if you want this to feel more real, or if you want it to feel just totally out of this world, then that's fine too. But that's, again, my takeaway from it. And again, the third point, add elements that can help it feel real. So before, with the Tristan and Sparga scene, and Sparga is actually Toast's girl, Tristan asks her, like, can I go get you some water? And she's like, how long is this gonna take? Like, so just adding little elements that feel natural, or feel like, yeah, at some point I would need a break, or I would need to take a minute and like go get some water, that helps. Like, putting these things in that gives your characters a little bit of that tension break, adds a little bit of human, like the human element to it, and humor, that will make the scenes feel more realistic at the end of the day. And lastly, for low fantasy intimacy, don't worry about adding a ton of fetish material. I've had people ask me like, oh, well, should I add this, the other thing? Whatever you feel like you're comfortable with and your characters are comfortable with at that time. Vanilla can still read as exciting and tense. And most of Matt's scenes are actually pretty vanilla. There's a handful that aren't, but really, like I said earlier, it's pretty much every cat girl's very first time. So while it's vanilla, I still add elements that make it feel exciting and new and different. And these cat girls are experiencing something new for them every time. So it's going to be a little bit different every time. That sounds like an interesting RPG. Programming sounds like hell to me, so I wish you luck if you jump into that. Okay, so next, we're going to talk about high fantasy intimacy. And by high fantasy, I am talking about cat girls, monster boys, demons, magic, elements that wouldn't usually be in human with human. The first part, and most important part to remember, is that not everyone is going to like the fetishes you include, and that's fine. Every person has a hard no list, and it is to be respected as much as their kink list. So if they have a hard no list and you are on the hard no list, then that's fine. It's just not what they read, and that doesn't make you a bad writer, and it doesn't make it a bad story. It's just not what that person reads. So it's okay. Write what you want. There will be an audience. You will find an audience. Next, if you are adding monster girls or monster boys, consider researching their species a little if based on something in reality, like snails. Snail girls started as a joke, and then I started like researching snails, and oh my god, they have magic love darts that they just shoot at each other to like get each other horny, and that's amazing. And they move at a certain speed and they sleep at crazy hours. So I went and I found all of these snail facts and I plugged them into snail girls. Came back to love darts. Welcome back, Strago. You did, Sky. Look, I used the art. It's Jack, Mia, and Sky. So when Sky was like, let's make this happen, I started looking up stuff about snails, and we had a really great day talking about snail facts and how they have like different shell types, and there's underwater and above water, and there's so much that I could use to build this crazy fucking snail girl world. So if you have a monster girl or a monster boy that is based in a realistic species, look them up, see what you can use, like add it in. Use their monster features to your advantage, like the love darts. With the driders, you can use horns, or with web, I'm sorry. Cackerels, I use their tails. I was really surprised to see that there's a lot of cackerel literature and we just ignore that they have tails, and how dare they? Love darts from snails are like octopus. It's full of genetic material. They're not full of genetic material. They're actually like aphrodisiac darts. And yes, Zatara, Cupid is supposedly based off the god of snails. I learned that too. That's where Cupid came from, was snails. 100%, yes. And we spent a lot of time looking at shale types. Go ahead, it's awesome. I actually took the name of the goddess, I think, of snails, and I use her in the spell names because I thought that was cool. There's so much that you can take out, like just research and kind of develop from, that you don't have to just do like generic monster girl, monster boy that just happens to have this, but you know, that's it. That's all they've got. Like, use this stuff to your advantage. It adds to the spice. It adds to it being a high fantasy intimate encounter. Like, damn guys, cackerel tails are awesome.
Surprised how you were actually making use of their tails.
For real! There's so many cool things you can do with your tail, and everyone ignored it. Is the snail king queen dressed in Roman purple? It could be. I haven't decided on their hierarchy. Do you bend culture differences instead of just race? It kind of goes with it, Chocobo, because like it's interesting with the snail girl stuff because they can actually like procreate on their own, so it's not like they need a man there like Catgirls does. So for them to have a guy is just kind of like a happy accident, and they can run with it, but they're not dependent on him. So yeah, that absolutely changes their culture differences, and I got to include like bugs and tiny species of things that they work with to make sure that their whole world comes to life, because it's like a smaller version of our world. So you can definitely change cultures instead of just the race and build that into their culture. Strogo, you're welcome for the snail facts. Zatara, that's really cool that you have an anglerfish. You know what I missed was the love darts shaped differently by species. I mean, we've only got Mia, Sky, and then Liana so far. Like, they haven't made it to water area. They've got to go after their next quest. So yeah, we'll have them shaped differently. That's fun. Like that. That's awesome. See, there's so much to play with. And then the last one is magic. Rappy. So I've had a few people ask if you can include magic to intimate scenes. Oh yes, absolutely. You can infuse items, fingers, limbs, tongues, whatever you want with magic. You can heat a room, use a potion, cast a spell, like... You can absolutely use magic to your advantage. Like, we've had a couple of magic users and cat girls that I could play with, and I was just like, yeah, let's see what I can do with this. And stuff like that, once again, will help you change up the scenes as you go along. Like, the longer your series goes, the more you're going to be looking for things that will change how the scenes read. So if you can grab on to stuff like magic, yes, by all means. Drago, no, absolutely not. You can write that though. See, this is, my guy is hot, and I would rather him be hot. How do you like to ground the magic to pull it in depth? To push it into a believable, enjoyable read. I got to help with the scene between Tristan and Aaliyah is his like magic mentor. And I had her like push. So magic is part of cat girls. Like, it's just Miana is like infused into them. So I had her push her magic like to her fingertips and to her tongue, and it created kind of like an electric feeling wherever she touched. And similar, I have a series or a scene with Saris and another magic user who has ice. So she had like ice in her fingertips and used ice into a toy because that was fun. And just you do it in little ways that aren't like changing the entire scene, but kind of adding to it. No, Struggo, I'm not putting snail eyes on this guy, but you go for it. No eye stalks. It's okay, Carmine, welcome back. Yeah, I turned it into a sensation that they could feel. And in my examples, you could also do potions. Like I think we've joked about like aphrodisiac potions and different potions that would have different effects. Kind of like the one I'm doing for you with the impersonate scroll. Like, that is absolutely an option. So that's how you turn it into something that makes sense. When you're already in a high fantasy world and you have your reader accepting these different things, like snail girls exist, it's a lot easier to introduce concepts of magic and to like put magic into your intimacy scenes, rather than if you were just human the whole time. We have been human the whole time, and suddenly there's magic and intimacy. It's going to be a lot harder to swallow, if that makes sense. And yeah, ice cube play is absolutely a thing. So like ice magic is kind of the same thing, just fingertips, tongue, same deal. Yeah, with Carmine's, Lit could summon a bunch of constructs. So that's why, like, in the little tiny example I had where he summoned like an extra tongue, he could summon extra hands. So his magic was actually like to summon more things. And it's just really overwhelming and like lots of sensations all at once. If both characters want the act to happen, but one is questioning themselves, how should you go about it? Pink, I would absolutely have them talk about it. Like, that's where communication and dialogue is king. That's where you're going to have the one who is questioning themselves talk to the other character, and then at the end of that conversation, you as the writer get to decide if you think that character is ready for it or not, or if they need to delay it. I think you came in a little late. We had a scene in Ryan My series where Cannoli, who is like a very sweet cat girl, she wasn't sure how she felt about Matt yet. So they like start making out and it gets a little hot and heavy, but she's like, I just want to cuddle. Like, she cuts it off because she's just not ready. But then the scene that happens later is actually one of the most memorable scenes in the whole series. So it's okay if you have the scene cut short and then you pick it up later on, because it can be absolutely explosive, which helps you as a writer, helps your characters. That's character growth, where your character who is questioning themselves is actually comfortable in what they're going to do and wants to continue. Hello, Bumblin' Busby. That's such a cute name. Thanks for joining us. We are in the midst of a writer's workshop about writing intimate scenes. Does that answer your question, Pink? You're welcome. Any other questions? We have another really, really pivotal scene that hasn't had a resolution yet since book 3, with 2 of the main characters having a scene like that where she cuts it short. But again, their meetup is going to be awesome. I can't wait to write it. So having a character that actually cuts it off early and that waits for it can be such a good slow burn and such a good build up and so worth it when it finally happens. Oh yeah, for sure, Pink. If one of them is ready to go and the other one is very nervous, absolutely build them up through dialogue, through actions. The one is going to have to really work to get the other to trust him, that it's going to be okay if they take this next step, because that's a lot of vulnerability and that's a lot of nervousness and that's a lot that they have to be okay with. So it can take time, and just be patient with them and see how they go, feel it out, see if your character's ready, and then you get to decide if they're or not. Oh my goodness, Bublin, thank you. I'm so appreciative. Rye is my husband. We are both halves of Double Blind. How far are you in our series? You've been following us. That's so exciting. Strago, I need some advice. I'm writing a story about an underappreciated man who works out very hard and does skincare and tries very hard to be a good person, appreciate others. But people keep writing him off because he has eye stars. No, Strago! How do I make this character attractive? Find him a woman with eye stalks. I don't see the problem. You know, I had a rule that I would ban people for uncouth questions. You're walking the line, Strago. My darling with the eye stalks. Look, my snail girls have tiny little cute antennae, and that's where it's stopping. And my guy is a human, and he's not going to have eye stalks. No, no, Sky. No men with eye stalks. No. No. So here's the most lewd slide in my whole thing, because this is really important. The character scenes and situations you explore do not define you. It is okay to write new things. It's okay to write spicy scenes and go a little wild. You are still awesome. You are still you. You have not changed. It's okay if you want to try to write down something that's a little darker than usual. It's okay if you woke up this morning and you were like, tentacle monsters sound fun. Please don't think that you are a different person because you decided that you wanted to try a new fetish. Like I said, everyone has hard nose, and it's important to respect the hard nose, and it's important to respect other people's fetishes. So whatever you want to write, exactly like Mana said, creator is not defined by the creation. It's fine if you write something that you're like, I could never do this in reality, but I'm gonna do this in fiction. Like, it's a safe place, so just push yourself a little bit, see what you find. I am now adding men with eye stalks to my hard no list. Which is sad because I have a pretty short hard no list. Can you not, Strugo? Yeah, I agree, Sneaky. It really bothers me when people don't agree with the story, so they automatically say it's a bad story. That's not how it works. Like, okay, you didn't like it. Something about it offended you. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's like a bad story. There's 3 like big fetishes that no publisher will publish, including Amazon, which is all up in the air, so I won't even mention them. Yeah, Amazon can't even mention because they're deleting shit now. So we'll say Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Draft to Digital. So the 3 big no's are incest, bestiality, and underage. Those are the 3 things that you will be very, 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 very hard pressed to publish officially anywhere, like even if you're an independent publisher. But I mean, hell, even if you write those, like Scribble Hub eats them up, AO3 eats them up, so there will always be like someone to read these things if that's what you're into, and I am not here to judge you. I'm just here to say like what you can feasibly publish and possibly make money on versus what you can't. But those are like the 3 top things that you cannot put through anywhere. Let's see. Terma said, I was a little nervous about that when I first started writing, thinking about writing and stuff. Terma, don't worry. Like, honestly, all of us feel those nerves and feel that fear. There was a very, very long time where I would not write intimacy unless I had like a whole bottle of wine, and then I would sit down and just start hashing it out. And then now I can write them sober, even though right now, like reading them out loud takes some wine, and I am redder than a tomato doing all of this. But I feel like it's really important to be okay with trying it, because even at the end of the day, you don't have to share it with anyone if you just want to practice and if you just want to try it and see where it goes, and then you want to kind of edit it later or try another scene. So please don't be, being nervous is okay, but don't be like embarrassed thinking about writing intimacy and stuff. Some of the most awesome creators and kindest, most accepting people I know are the ones who push themselves instead of always playing it safe. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Please, like, push yourself a little bit. Keep trying things. You might find something that you absolutely love and you had no idea that you were going to be cool with. So it's worth it. And it's good practice at the end of the day, because you learn new things. You learn how to put your character into new situations, but still bring the character with you instead of creating a puppet show. Thank you, Mana. I appreciate it. I haven't had the time to read in months, so I've not been the first volume. Oh, thank you. Bumblin, we have a Discord server. It's 18 plus just because the story is 18 plus, but everyone there is very warm and lovely and wonderful. And anyone else who is watching, Pink, if you're still hanging out, we would love to have you. It's super wholesome and all these wonderful people are in it. We would love to have you. More writing stream updates. I am going to add stocks into the autoban list. It's going to be very fast. And Rune, finding your voice in writing takes a lot of time. Thank you. It's a Discord, Sky. I'm gonna get off this scene so that like I agree that every writer should push their own boundaries. I love doing short stories and finding new ways to do short stories. I've entered short story contests where I write in different points of view, different genres, different perspectives. I read everything I can pick up. If writing is really your passion and where you want to keep honing yourself, then practice and reading are the 2 best things that you can do for yourself. And Terma, that's okay. Like, again, experience outward or in writing. It's worth reading, it's worth writing, it's worth practicing. You learn a lot. Like, in just 3.5 years now, Brian and I have written over 3 million words. So please, until you've written 3 million words, don't tell me that like you can't stand up to like where we're at. You've gotta keep writing. See, your story is awesome. There's always an audience. There might not, I don't know, it's worth it to keep pushing. And even with experience, you can't make it without a bottle of wine, or present it without a bottle of wine and turning very red. That's good, Rune. That's how you grow as a writer. You go into places that you don't know if you can write. White girls, guys, and they drink too. Oh, hey, see. That's a thing, followed up by, why is Audible suggesting this to me? Yeah, monster romance is a huge thing. I don't know why Audible is suggesting it. You listen to the first Catgirls book, right? That's not even, there's no monsters yet, so I don't know why it's telling you. And exactly what Des said, it's a skill like any other. You get better over time, like carpenter mechanic. Like you can't expect to 3 million chats is different than writing a story though. You can't expect to go and write a story perfect your first time. And I feel like a lot of people hold that to themselves. Like they hold that expectation of themselves, which is not fair. Like that's not fair to you. I can't draw great. Like I've drawn lots of little sketches and I've done Inktober, but I still, like I know where I'm at. I can't expect to sit down and make a masterpiece. Come on, I hope relationship in a good way. You dream of turtle girls. Okay, so Chocobo sent me some questions that I'm going to hop to and go through. And you guys can ask me questions too, and I will go back and forth because I want to make sure I hit all of these. So one of the first ones was, how would you navigate the cultural and physical differences in a relationship between a dwarf and a human or other races, and what unique challenges and attractions might arise? I think that depends on your society and how you set it up and how all of those relations and like species view sex and view intimacy. So it's really hard for me to say like what unique challenges and attractions might arise unless I'm writing the story and I'm feeling out that world and figuring out exactly like what I think that they'll have. So if it's more specific, I mean, besides unique challenges is one is shorter than the other, and then it's just a matter of climbing, really.
As Mao says, I would like to climb him like a tree.
Yeah, exactly as Mao says. I would like to climb him like a tree. Intimacy with injury. So I couldn't fit this in the PowerPoint, but I wanted to touch on it because it's awesome. For a character who has been injured or maimed, how would you approach writing their journey towards intimacy? Would their experiences change the nature or pace of romance in their narrative? So, first of all, it depends on how deeply their injury is. The scene with Matt and Jeannie, the girl who was like, what is this scar and what gave you this venom? Matt recently like punched a wall and like only had use of his one hand, and I'm like, challenge accepted. So he still found control of the situation and he still managed to top it. He just figured it out around his hand. But like when adrenaline hits you, pain kind of stops. So you don't have to really worry about whatever is hurting at that moment. Same with the Sunray and Magni chapter. Like both of them are cut to shit, but neither of them really notice, and it's just kind of adding to the tension and their heightened senses and how they're feeling. So like blood play is a very real fetish, and I know it's not for everyone, but like that's another option that you can go that way. It adds to the high, and adrenaline is an absolutely crazy drug. Now, if you're talking about maimed permanently, like they have lost a leg, I think that would depend on how your character takes that and how they feel about themselves and their self-confidence. So if your character has lost a leg and they think that makes them like less of a human being, that could absolutely change their romantic experiences and their look on intimacy. They could be really nervous about approaching things like this. They could be worried that they won't be seen as like a whole person. So you could use that to your advantage in the story. So it really depends on how injured and maimed we're talking and how they see themselves in that situation, and if this is like something that's going to be absolutely debilitating or if it's something that adds to the high. Does that make sense? Yeah, pain play also gets endorphin rushes. Pain play, I think, kind of depends. That's a really wide range because you could have like fighting, knives, scratching, just like that's a huge thing. Pacing, is there such thing as too much detail or too long a scene? We talked about that in pacing, where no, there's really not such thing as too long a scene as long as the pacing keeps up. How do you manage pacing to keep the reader engaged without overwhelming them with explicit content? Making sure that every single sentence counts. You'll just want to make sure every sentence is moving the plot, moving the character, moving the story, like developing something. Then your reader will stay engaged. For crafting spicy scenes, do you see these choices as reflections of character traits, or do they serve a broader narrative purpose? 100%, whatever they decide to do is reflective of their character traits, their experience, and where they are at that moment in the story. So if they're super experienced, they're going to ask to do more experienced things rather than someone who's just starting out. If there is a character affection, but there isn't physical attraction, does physical intimacy make sense? Honestly, no. It feels really forced. Thank you for the hydrate. Because you can have affection with platonic relationships. Like, for example, I know myself, like all of my best friends and we would kind of hold hands and cuddle or snuggle on the couch. Like all of these like affectionate moments that are very platonic friendship, but nothing to do with physical intimacy. Yeah, I feel like if you go from character affection to sudden physical attraction, that kind of falls in the realm of like the convenient lesbians thing where it's like, yeah, we're best friends and now we're in bed. Like it just doesn't feel right. Exactly like Sky said, sometimes you just need a good cuddle with a mate. That's why he comes out here every 6 months, to cuddle with his husband. Let's see. We covered consent and communication, emotional intimacy. How do you blend emotional intimacy between the characters? A lot of that is through communication. Like that really overlaps with communication. Emotion is hard to convey unless you're like explicitly saying she loved him, which you can say that like every so often, but you'll want to kind of avoid like, she felt so powerfully about this, and show that more and kind of how they're feeling, how their heart's feeling, how their chest's doing, what their physical reaction is, and then build it with the dialogue too. So try and show more than tell with these kinds of things. Yeah, it does. It breaks suspension of disbelief. Yeah, that's a good example, Rune, like dating lots of platonic relationships. We just hang out and cuddle, man. Guy said he's not even that cuddly. Right?
Oh, that I'm not?
Yeah. No, he's not. Just with me. Digital hug. Taboos and boundaries. Let's see. We kind of talked about that. So the 3 ones that I mentioned that people won't publish, those are really the big taboos. But again, everything can be a taboo for someone. Like even vanilla outside of marriage is a big taboo depending on your religion. So it really depends on how you are portraying your characters, and how you're portraying your culture and your environment, and how you want to approach that. And then if you are comfortable writing certain fetishes or not. That's really where it stops. Yeah, tender scenes are wonderful. And like I said too, you don't have to have a bunch of crazy fetishes. Like vanilla scenes can be just as wonderful and just as sweet and just as sexy. You don't have to add a bunch. It's just how you portray it. Sky, everyone has boundaries, and if they think you're a harem, there are even more. We talked about character growth and development. Can you share examples where intimacy leads to a profound personal change? Yeah, Matt is like the walking example of that, I think. You see how he reacts to Yomi, then how he reacts to Myron, then his healing with Saphira, and then like after that, he still like needs control, but he has a more healthy approach to intimacy in general. And then there's like Tristan, who has the light switch where like as soon as the clothes come off, he's a totally different person. So it really does affect everybody in a different way. Oh, Terma, it's okay. Thank you so much. Don't worry about being late. That was kind of early. Yeah, AC, like, I've talked about it a lot too. It's really dependent on the social norms, the culture, the character background, their vision on life, like how things are going. There's a lot to take apart. Post intimacy dynamics. After a pivotal scene, how do you handle the aftermath in terms of character relationships? We covered that with like aftercare, and if they do leave early, then that can be a big thing. Can intimacy always bring characters closer, or can it sometimes create distance or conflict? Absolutely, you can do both, which is great. Thank you so much, Rune. It can bring characters closer. It can also break them apart. I've had the one I mentioned earlier where like her first experience was awful. It was actually like with her best friend, and she grew really distant like from her best friend. She was not a good main or character. She was just not a good person. She was very mean, but she created this giant valley between them because she was really upset and disappointed with how things went. So it can definitely create conflict. Another good example is, I know you haven't gotten this far, but Kailu sees all of the cat girls as like subhuman species that he's just like mating with these monster girls. So that's part of what makes him so scared to get close to anybody. He's like forsaking his wife, and he's worried about becoming something lesser than what he is. So intimacy can play a huge part in character development, how they react to the world, and how they see other people. Okay, I got through all of Chocobo's questions. More questions. Yeah, intimacy in sex scenes, I feel like, are really downplayed in a lot of fiction, when the reality is they can really make or break a character. They can change your entire story, your plot. It can affect your world. There's a lot that you can do with it. Like, it's not always the perfect scene. It's not always the perfect first time. Sometimes things happen, and that's okay. And I find that, like, it's, especially when it's like the first few times with anyone, there's always like a little bit of awkwardness where like buttons get stuck or someone's in a wrong position or something happens. Like, it's normal, and adding those kinds of dimensions to your scenes can really help them feel like real scenes and real characters. Yeah, some stories just tease. And then, like I said too, some stories it's like a puppet show where you have these really cool characters, and then you get to this intimate scene and they suddenly become completely different people that you have not been reading for the last 300 pages. So who are these people? Yeah, characters and people make mistakes in spicy scenes, especially in spicy scenes. Again, don't be an instant Chad or an instant like goddess at what you're doing. It's okay to feel things out. It feels more natural to like kind of feel things out with a new partner. Communication. Oh no, don't be sorry, Terma. Okay. I actually did not cover this. What is the best advice you can give for someone who lacks the intimate experience with writing intimate scenes? I think in this situation, one of the best things you can do is find other stories and read them that have intimate scenes in them and pull away what you like about it and what you don't like about it. Like make a list of things that caught your attention and that really like got your heart speeding, or like what made you like the characters more, or what about the scene you enjoyed, what kind of language they used, and take note. Like I have never fought in a war before, but I will go and read plenty of books that have scenes like that to understand combat and how it plays out and like what people are doing in these fight scenes. I've never taken a sword to somebody either, and I've never killed a dragon, but I still try and go through other stories and other books and make note of things that I like. And I think that you can do that with intimate scenes too. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. Like, you have to focus on the intention and what you want to get out of the scene. So, is it something that you want to forward with the world, forward your character? Do you want one of the characters to learn something? I feel like a character should take something away from an intimate scene every time, no matter if it's their first or their 50th. There should be something they learn about the other partner, about themselves, about the world. Like, even if it's super tiny, just something that forwards your plot. Yeah, exactly. That's really awesome. You read books and you read other material that helps you craft these. And it's good to read the stuff that you like and the stuff you don't like, because you'll learn really quick the things that you don't want to add. Okay, we are coming right up on 2.5 hours. I know this is a longer workshop, and you all are amazing for coming and hanging and asking beautiful questions. And I appreciate you a ton. And again, if you are not in our Discord community, by all means, we would love to have you. Everyone in there is awesome. We can get you more updates. Brian's going to do a stream on creating a class on Thursday, like one of the classes in Neuralia, and he'll actually do a workshop soon about like magic. So please, by all means, come hang out with us. Thank you very much for the stream. We appreciate you a ton. Thank you, Rune. And I will talk to you soon. Please have a wonderful rest of your night. Thursday. Thursday he's doing it. Oh no, not Thursday. Sorry, Friday. Friday. Thursday is WoW night. Tomorrow I get to be a degenerate. Friday. Friday he's doing it. So thank you guys very, very much for attending. Thank you for being so kind. This was very nerve-wracking for me. So I appreciate you so much for accepting me and welcoming me and being so open-minded. And I will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful night, okay?